All right, are we finally live? We are finally live. Welcome back to another edition of BCMG Game Picks. If you see me looking down at my phone, it's because I am getting the lines up on my screen. Don't worry, I am not distracted. I am locked in and ready to go because we have every single team playing this week, which I find interesting that no teams have a bye week on week 8. I think it was more so maybe a decision of they don't want anyone having a bye at the exact middle of the season. I don't know, or not the exact middle, but what used to be the exact middle. Anyway, we're going to pretty much speed through these games today because we have a lot of them and we do not have a lot of time. Quick disclaimer: it would be irresponsible of me to suggest bets on 16 different football games, and I'm not going to. I just want to put it out there the reason why that is. First of all, I do not see value in all 16 games. And just because there are 16 games does not mean that we have to make plays on all 16. Now, with that being said, I will say that don't limit yourself, but I will also say to that point, find your value, pick your spots, do not overextend yourself or your bankroll. So there are going to be games here in this slate where I'm going to say I lean this way, I lean that way. That is not me giving an official pick, but I do have to make a pick for the game pick segment as per BCMG rules, not mine. So the first game we have is the Saints versus the Colts. This is one that I am going to spend a little bit of time on in terms of player props, but for those who are familiar with this live stream already, you probably already know where I'm going in terms of player props. First of all, there's an illness that was going through the New Orleans locker room this week. It hit Michael Thomas and Jimmy Graham. Michael Thomas is going to play. Jimmy Graham's not. Alante Taylor, Marcus May also have some injuries that have kept them a little questionable. Demario Davis, same thing. Taysom Hill, same thing. Andre Speed, same thing. Now they're all playing, but I do think it's important to note that a lot of those guys have missed some practice this week. New Orleans runs a ton of man-to-man coverage, the most of it in the league. Gardner Minshew has a 94 passer rating versus man coverage. Indy likes to run the ball. It's the staple of what they do. New Orleans is 17th in yards per rush allowed. New Orleans is not good at converting in the red zone. Indy is 8th in third down defense, but not great in the red zone. New Orleans also not good at converting on third down. That's the reason I say that. New Orleans is the less disciplined team. There's, I have a little bit of a qualm with the Colts defense. I don't think it's going to work out necessarily well in this game. The single high set Derek Carr has had success against, and he's better against zone coverage. But Rashid Shaheed, my man Rashid Shaheed is facing a zone defense, a team that runs zone defense almost all the time. There are injuries in the secondary for the Colts. Michael Thomas has had that illness. I wonder how much he necessarily gets the outside reps this week, as much as Shaheed has, and in this game plan. He had 8 targets in the game against Jacksonville. Which is a zone-heavy team. He had 6 against in the game against the Texans, and he got a touchdown. He had 7 targets in the game against the Bucks, another zone-heavy team. He's going to get the targets. The question is, will he get in the end zone? I like the odds at plus 333 at any time, so I'll take Rashid Shaheed anytime touchdown. In terms of which team I lean, I think it's kind of obvious from what I've described that I do lean the Colts way. I think they're being a little bit undervalued. I think that 30, I don't know what they gave up last week, 38 points, something like that was a bit of a hiccup with some questionable calls here and there, but also just not a great matchup for them defensively. And they turned the ball over a little bit too much. Gardner Minshew's mentioned how much he wants to work on that over this week. I do think that the Colts will come out a little cleaner in this game. And the Saints are not a clean team themselves. They get penalized very, very often, 31st in penalty yards per game. So I would lean towards the Colts here. I don't have an official play on them. I have an official play on Rashid Shaheed. But moving on to the Jacksonville-Pittsburgh game. This is a trend that I think is probably pretty well known at this point by the public. You have Mike Tomlin as a home dog. Since being hired 13-10 straight up, 14-5-4 against the spread. The 4 pushes is pretty crazy to me, honestly. But Mike Tomlin, very profitable in this home dog spot. The Jaguars have not especially been convincing in their victories in recent times. They're 4 straight games. There's 4 straight wins. They have taken down the Bills in the process. They look good against the Bills, but more so the Bills look bad against them. The line there is suspect. They've won 4 straight games. It's only a 2-point line. on the road against. I get that the Steelers are a winning team. They're 4-2, but they have not looked good in those 4 wins. The Jaguars are missing or possibly missing Andre Cisco, Tyson Campbell, Walker Little, and Brandon Scherf. I do think most of those guys are playing as of recently, but Trevor Lawrence has also been hampered with a knee injury over the week. Trevor Lawrence's passer rating when he is pressured drops to 75.4. TJ Watt likes to bring pressure. If you haven't noticed, he'll be facing Anton Harrison and Evan Engram, who are both very bad at pass blocking. Teams coming off of 4 straight wins that are now road favorites of 3 or less are 51, 70, and 4 against the spread. Both of these teams are top 7 in dropback EPA allowed. So they're going to be good against the pass. Jaguars are better against the run than Pittsburgh is. But there is reverse line movement seeming to be hanging around Pittsburgh. The line's staying around 2.5, despite a lot of people on the Jaguars. I do think that some form of cohesion with the offense might be forming with Deontay Johnson back for the Steelers. And I don't think Trevor Lawrence is going to be as mobile as he usually is with that knee injury. His rushing yard prop is at 15.5 yards. He's had 31 or more rushing yards in 3 of his last 4 games. That line is suspect to me as well. It makes me think that he's going to be staying in the pocket a little bit more. And if he is, TJ Watt's going to get to him. So I have 2 plays in this game. One of them is Steelers +2 for half a unit, and the other one is TJ Watt over 0.5 sacks at -129 for 0.5 units. That's at Bet Rivers, and you have to shop for sack lines because they will be varied across books. 1 second. Got to hydrate a little bit during this. All right. Moving on. Houston versus Carolina. Let me find. I have so many notes on this game. I have to find the top of it. All right. So, first of all, everyone on this program, or most people on this program, probably know how much I love CJ Stroud at this current point, and pretty much before this current point as well. I was a big fan of him when he was coming out of high school, going into college, and throughout college. But it doesn't mean that I'm going to just have to bet on him every single time we play or they play. The Texans are going to be missing Sheldon Rankins and Robert Woods. Not really huge injuries. Just thought I'd mention it. Von Bell out for the Panthers. That's kind of a big one. Laviska Shenault, not as much. Brian Burns and Frankie Luvu are questionable, but I think they're going to play. So Carolina, by the way, is 0-5-1 against the spread. Teams that are below 500 coming off of 4 straight losses against the spread before week 10 that are now home dogs of 5 or less and a total of under 50. I know this doesn't really matter too much, but they're 9-0 against the spread since 2012. So worth a shot. This CJ Stroud under pressure has a 59.5 passer rating, and Brian Burns and Frankie Luvu, if they play, I think they are probably going to get a lot of pressure. The Panthers are also getting Austin Corbett back on the offensive line for the first time. That should help relieve some pressure on the right side. If Taylor Moton, forgot how to pronounce his name, if he plays, then I'm comfortable that they will have what they need against Will Anderson, although I'm not exactly thrilled about the matchup. The Panthers run 3 wide receiver sets 81% of the time. We can assume a lot of nickel defense from Houston. We can also assume a lot of zone defense from Houston. They run the 7th most of that in the league and allow the 11th highest passer rating to zone coverage in the league. Bryce Young is a 90.3 passer rating versus zone coverage, which is better than his passer rating versus man. But here's the more important thing. His completion percentage against zone coverage is 80.5%. That is 3rd best in the league behind Geno Smith and Lamar Jackson. He's very comfortable against zone defense. Adam Thielen, also a weapon against zone defense. Now, the player props side of things real quick. Tight ends versus the Texans this season. Kyle Pitts, 7 receptions, 87 yards. Jonnu Smith, 6 receptions, 67 yards. Evan Engram, 7 receptions, 67 yards. Hayden Hurst's target rate goes up by 2% when facing zone coverage. His zone catch rate is 82%, and his passer rating when thrown to in zone is 91, which is double his rate versus man. I wrote versus zone in my notes. Zone twice. The second most targets in the red zone for the Panthers this year, Hayden Hurst, 21% target share. So I think that's a very interesting note as I go through this, but we'll come back to it. The Panthers run a lot of zone as well. Stroud does dice up zone coverage, so I expect the offense to be moving a little bit for Houston. Carolina's handing over play calling duties to Thomas Brown. Happened before the bye week. I think both teams are going to be ready. I think both quarterbacks are going to be ready. These quarterbacks are best friends from not only high school, but from pretty much childhood. They've been playing football together since they were kids. I think they're psyched to be playing against one another, and I think they want to compete well against one another. Xavier Woods returning, I think, is a big factor for the Panthers if he does. He has been returning to practice this week. So I think that there's going to be some help in the secondary for Carolina that is not necessarily expected. Houston's won 3 of the last 4 games. I think there might be a little bit of complacency there. There's a young team. They may think they have a lot more things figured out than they really do. This is their first real trap game. Teams that have failed to cover in 4 straight games facing teams that have covered in 4 straight games since 2013 are 7-2 against the spread. The average line 3.3. Very similar situation. Something that may hold water, may not. Just wanted to have it out there. Frank Reich was the head coach and play caller for the Colts up until 2022. In 2021, the Colts played the 49ers, who had a defense led by D'Amico Ryans. The Colts won that game 30-18. They scored quite handily. Now, obviously, completely different rosters for both sides. I'm just saying the scheme did work out in Frank Reich's favor. I think a lot of points favor Carolina here. And I think a team that's desperate for a win off a bye week is dangerous. Winless teams that have 10 or more days of rest are 47, 34, and 2 against the spread. I have the Panthers plus 3.5 for 2 units. I have the Panthers money line for a half unit. Hayden Hurst anytime touchdown plus 500, 0.5 units. Hayden Hurst first touchdown plus 2,700. This is the Jimmy Graham game again. I'm telling you. 0.25 units. Hayden Hurst over 19.5 receiving yards plus 108, 0.5. And then Adam Thielen anytime touchdown plus 220, 0.25. I like all of these things. I think if you want to get real dangerous, I'll only suggest this because I took it myself and play it for a very small amount. But most people get profit boosts on FanDuel often. I don't get that many, but I had one saved up. I used it. It was a 3-leg SGP. This is why I don't suggest this stuff. But if you think that both Hayden Hurst and Adam Thielen are going to score touchdowns, then Adam Thielen and Hayden Hurst scoring touchdowns means most likely 2 passing touchdowns. So Bryce Young over 1.5 passing touchdowns is like plus 168 or something. So if you need a third leg, if you think those 2 are going to score touchdowns, you add Bryce Young over 1.5 passing touchdowns. If you believe those first 2 things are going to happen, you likely believe the third is going to happen. So that gives you an easy plus money third leg at plus 168. If you believe that that is what's going to happen, I do personally. Moving on to the next game, and now I have to pull the Vegas lines back up. Silly me. Okay, the first game that I really don't have anything on, we have Philly at Washington. The notes that I'll give on this game are pretty much, I really don't like taking the same underdog to cover twice in a season against a divisional rival. It's just, especially with the Commanders, Riverboat Ron, Sam Howell under pressure is not great. The Eagles are coming off of that bad loss against the Jets. I know they probably had a different. Did they have the bye week last week? I have to make sure. Before I say something stupid. Yeah, no, they didn't. They beat the Dolphins. Scratch that. But they're coming off that big win against the Dolphins. As you can see, I didn't look too much into this game because I don't like betting divisional dogs in this spot. They're at home. It's +7. It stayed at +7 pretty much the whole time. If I had to take a side here, I like the Eagles with the -7. I know it's a little dangerous road divisional favorite at a touchdown or more, but the fact of the matter is that the Eagles are still pissed. The Eagles hate the Commanders at this point after the winless after they took over the undefeated season with the taking the knee on the rough and the passer call, and then this last game where they beat them, but it was barely. There was a lot of chippiness. There was a lot of fighting. I think the Eagles probably come out of here with some motivation. They're hot coming off of last week. The Commanders seem a bit disheveled. I don't necessarily know what they have going for them at this current juncture. They just lost to the Giants last week. And I'm a huge Giants fan, obviously, but for the Commanders. That is certainly a season turner and not in the right way. I don't know how Sam Howell handles that kind of loss. Another big unknown for me in this game. I I lean Eagles, but I would say stay away from it in general. That would be my general consensus there. Moving on to the Dallas and Los Angeles Rams game. This is a game that I'm going to target a little bit. Um, Actually, depending on how you think of it, more than a little bit because I have more than one play on it. But looking at the Rams, Ernest Jones and Rob Havenstein are questionable. I don't know if they're going to play. I know Tyron Smith for the Dallas Cowboys has been ruled out, which is kind of upsetting for me, but we'll move on. Matt Stafford under pressure is the storyline I want to talk about here. His pressure rate, his passer rating under pressure is 59. Dallas is the second highest pressure rating in the league, pressure percentage in the league. They have the second highest QB hurry percentage in the league, or the highest, sorry, at 24%. And their sack percentage is 8.6%, which is eighth best in the league. They allow the fourth lowest dropback EPA in the league, and they play a ton of man defense. Stafford's completion percentage versus man defense is 55%, which puts him in the tier of Justin Fields, Daniel Jones, Geno Smith. Geno, quick apology, you don't deserve to be in that category, but you tear up zone defenses at 80.8% completion. So it's not it's not a bad thing. The Rams also run a lot of man defense, but Dak is better versus man defense than he is versus zone. He's a 100.4 passer rating with a 68% completion percentage against it. In terms of who I'd choose to have go up against Aaron Donald, not that I would choose anybody and think that they're winning. Zach Martin's a pretty good guy to go up in there. Tyler Smith, the other guard, if they move Zach Martin or if something goes on with Zach Martin, I don't know. Tyler Smith will be able to move over. I think he will be able to do a good job as well. I think they can maybe hold him down long enough. The Rams 2-5-2 against the spread in their last 9 games as road dogs, 0-4-2 against the spread when they are facing a non-divisional opponent, and the under is 1-7-1 in these games. In case anyone was looking at a total there, Micah Parsons will be facing Alaric Jackson. Alaric Jackson's allowed 21 pressures already in 2023. CeeDee Lamb facing man coverage. Big bonus for him. I'm not going to necessarily target him in this game because of some other factors, but he has a 136 passer rating to him when he's targeted in man coverage. Dallas is coming off 2 extremely hard games against the Chargers and the 49ers. The Rams are also 2-4 in their last 6 games. The 2 wins were against Indy, where they blew a 20-point lead and had to win it overtime in Arizona. I just don't necessarily believe in them performing in this spot against a tough defense like this. I don't love betting on McCarthy over McVay. And I don't like betting on the Cowboys in general. I don't like betting on the corners the Cowboys have against Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. Stafford is at 7th, though, in intended air yards. And that's why I think that the wide receiver matchups won't matter as much because he's got to have enough time to get the ball out and get it deep enough. The receivers have to have a chance to get to those intended air yards. And I just don't necessarily know if that's going to happen. I don't know if he's going to be comfortable enough to place the ball where it needs to be placed with Micah Parsons probably all over him for most of the game. I also think Dallas has some good wide receiver matchups because of how Dak plays against man. Dallas is 6-2 in the last 8 games where Dak has played as a -6 favorite or higher. I like Micah Parsons to get a sack against a stoic and not very mobile Matt Stafford. Micah Parsons over 0.5 sacks, -143 for a half unit at BetRivers, and Dallas -6.5 for 1 unit at BetMGM. Now the Patriots and Dolphins game. This is on the top of the list of games that I don't want to bet on. There are guys coming back for the Patriots injury-wise. J.C. Jackson getting more fit into the defense, but at the same time, man, I still don't trust Mac Jones. I don't care what they did last week against Buffalo. Honestly, let me change that. I care, but I don't necessarily think it's indicative of too much of how the offense is going. I don't think it's going to change the direction of the offensive season overall. And the Dolphins are coming off of, frankly, an embarrassment at home against not at home, but against the Eagles, which is the second team that they've played with a winning record, and they lost to them and the Bills. They have a lot to prove. I don't necessarily think that they're going to come into this game slouching. I don't think they're going to come into this game expecting, a pushover. I don't think it's a trap game by any means. They know the Patriots. They know Bill Belichick. And then on the other side, I think Bill Belichick is going to be ready for this game, but I don't know how much you can do against Tyreek Hill. I think Tyreek Hill is kind of, I don't want to say unschemable against, but like if he gets the ball in space, you're toast. No matter how you schemed it up, he can get a comeback route. He could get a screenplay, and even if you have him double covered, if there's two blockers there, you might be done for. I just don't necessarily like this spot. And if I did, I would like it at the Dolphins at -6.5, something like that. 8 is too high for me to take, but I don't really like the Patriots up until like 10. I know that doesn't really make sense. I know there's a gray area there between 6 and 10 of which ones I should like, but that's just for me that's a gray area. That's the margin of error area, and I don't feel comfortable with it. So I do not recommend any single play on this game, props wise, sides wise, total wise. I mean, I guess if you wanted to take a total, 46.5 is a little high for me in this one in divisional game, but like I could easily see it going over. So my advice would be to completely stay away from that one. And if you play it, best of luck to you. Because I have to take a lean, I'm going to take the Patriots because I have several friends who are from Massachusetts who are now in Miami to go see the Patriots, and I want to root for them with them. So go Patriots! Hope you fellas are having a good time. If anyone's watching, probably not. You guys are probably drinking, but best of luck to you. Go Patriots! Hope you guys have a great time. The next game, Giants Jets. Something I definitely cannot be unbiased on, but we're not taking a side on it anyway. This is a game for me where you click the under and move on kind of straight away. The Jets coming off a bye week, yes, but the offense still putrid. Zach Wilson he shelves up under pressure, and the Giants love to blitz. It's the Wake Martindale way. It might actually get through against a pretty porous Jets offensive line so far. The Giants defense has really stepped it up the last couple of weeks. We have the 32nd and 30th ranked teams in red zone scoring, and both defenses are ranked in the top 10 in red zone scoring defense. The Jets' run game will be a big feature for them here, which will take time off the clock, especially because it will be raining most of the game. Both teams are bottom five in yards per pass. Both teams are bottom 5 in allowing their QB to be sacked. The Jets have struggled coming off a bye the last couple of years, and the Jets' offense really only thrives off of turnovers. Tyrod Taylor is a guy that loves to protect the ball. The Giants have scored 16 or fewer points in 4 straight games. Quentin Williams has got the best matchup I could see him pretty much ever having, with the Giants' offensive line being the way it is and the middle of the offensive line being the way it is. The Giants' receivers have a very tough task facing DJ Reed and Sauce Gardner. The only guy I see on the Giants having an advantageous matchup in the passing game are their two guys, Darren Waller and Saquon Barkley, because I don't necessarily think the safeties and linebackers can cover those two guys in particular. I expect a lot of penalties in this game. The ref crew in this game is one that's known for calling a lot of holding, a lot of illegal blocks. It's a slippery game. It's going to be wet out with the rain. I can definitely see that playing a role in a lot of teams backing themselves up in this one. Breece Hall, I think, should have a great game in this one. They're going to be running a lot. The Giants have a bottom 5 run defense. I'm shocked to see his total at 70.5, so I took it. We have the under 35.5 at this game, and Breece Hall over 70.5 rushing yards for a half unit. And because I have to pick a side in this game for game picks, you will not catch me dead taking the Jets over the Giants, because I have too many friends that are Jets fans here in New York, and they will laugh at me forever if I chose the Jets over the Giants. So go Giants, baby. G-men up. Big Blue. All the Jets fan friends who I have who may be watching this, you guys can suck it. So moving on, Atlanta, Tennessee. This is another game where I would think just click the under, move right along. Will Levis is playing. That should be the under qualifier right there. I do not believe in him against an NFL defense yet. There's a chance of rain for the entire game here. The total's really low. I can figure out why. Both of these teams have been absolute cash cows for the under. Atlanta 6-1 to the under. Tennessee 5-1 to the under. The average amount of points the Falcons have scored in a game this year is 35.4. The Titans is 36.8. That's total, not each. Sorry. These are both really good defenses, especially against the run, which means, first of all, the Titans are going to get slowed down because with rookie quarterback making his first career start, they're going to want to run the ball a lot more. He's facing a team that plays a ton of man coverage, and he has no receivers that can create separation. I don't see a lot of offense coming out of this game for Tennessee. I don't, and if they want to run the ball, the Falcons literally have the best run EPA allowed in the NFL defensively. So I'm not necessarily worried about that. Although Derrick Henry can break those trends, and it would possibly happen. The Titans are fifth in pressure percentage. Desmond Ridder has a 60.1 passer rating under pressure. I don't see where the offense really comes from either team here because the Titans also have a decent run defense. It'll likely be a wet field. It's hard to cut on. I don't see either offensive coordinator as very innovative. So I don't know how they're going to necessarily game plan around these things. My guess is their game plans are honestly going to stay the same as they were. And the only thing I'm really worried about here is turnovers. Turnovers could necessarily cause good field position for either team. But I really do think that the defenses stay strong in this one. If you want to take anything, I think maybe like a field goals prop, but it's raining. So do with that what you will. Young Wei Koo, I picked him up in fantasy because Daniel Carlson's hurt. So what are you going to do? I have the under 35.5 here in this game. And game picks wise, give me the Falcons. I know they're favored on the road here. I know Desmond Ridder is not a offensive powerhouse by any means, but I just don't see any offense coming out of Tennessee's side here, even though it is Mike Vrabel as a home dog. Ooh. Minnesota, Green Bay. This is a game that I'm staying away from, but I will give you guys a couple big heads ups. First of all, I think Kirk Cousins is the Vikings are 4-1 in their last 5 against the spread as road favorites. I think that Jordan Love is giving me a lot of pause. But here's another thing. Tons of reverse line movement and sharp money coming in on the Packers. I don't take that with too much salt when it comes to the sharp money, but the reverse line movement I do pay attention to. Minnesota blitzes all out almost all the time. Jordan Love's awful under pressure. The Vikings defense is terrible, so I don't necessarily know which way that's going to go. But at the same time, I don't want to risk it. And the Vikings offense is good enough, and the Packers defense has been bad enough to the point where I have no idea what's going to happen in this game. Because of the reverse line movement, my game pick will be the Green Bay Packers. But I'm not confident in it at all. And there's nothing I can really say to take either side, but I don't want to advise anything that I do not believe in. I don't agree with taking anything in this game from my perspective. If someone else has an angle that they like in this game, by all means play it. It's just not one that I necessarily have. 4 o'clock games, 4:05. The Cleveland Browns at the Seattle Seahawks. This line's kind of stinky. Why are they plus 4.5? I mean, I understand that at a certain point, the 12th man thing exists. I understand that. Let me just make sure I'm right about this before I lie, because I do believe the Browns play a ton of zone defense, and Geno Smith, as we have mentioned, dices up zone defense. But if they run a lot of man, let me make sure I'm right about this. As soon as it wants to load. That's the thing. As soon as I start these streams, the internet starts running very, very slowly. We'll come back to it, I guess. That's very annoying. Oh, here we go. Okay, man defense. The Cleveland Browns run a lot of man defense. Okay, so that pretty much solidifies what I want to do here. The Browns run a lot of man. Geno struggles a lot against man. We are officially going to add this to our official picks. I know PJ Walker's playing. I don't necessarily trust him, but I trust this Browns defense. I don't trust Geno Smith against man defense. And the Browns gave up 30 something points last week. I just do not think that happens again. I really don't. I think that they have the capabilities to rush the passer. I think that the offensive line for the Seattle Seahawks is still banged up a little bit. I don't think Abe Lucas is all the way there yet. 4.5. Give me the points. I'll take the Cleveland Browns, and I'm going to add that to my sheet once we are done here today. Here's another game that I have absolutely nothing in that I really tried to look at, couldn't do it. So the Chiefs -7, that line has stayed stoic pretty much the entire week. Like, I like the Chiefs, full disclosure, I lean the Chiefs, but I can't take the Chiefs. The line has not moved whatsoever. There's going to be a ton of snow on the ground. I just do not necessarily know how that's going to play out at all. I would take the Chiefs money line in a parlay if you're like looking for one of those add-ons, but I really don't advise doing something like that in the first place in a snow game. Patrick Mahomes, very good in games with a total under 49. We've talked about that on the show before. I just don't necessarily think that trends like that apply in a game where there's 6 inches of snow on the ground. And we can dance around a lot of it like all we want and say how much better that the Kansas City Chiefs are than the Denver Broncos, but they beat them by 11 points with no snow on the ground. And for whatever that's worth, even though it may not be worth much, this game's now in Denver. The reason I do lean the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes 21-8 against the spread when the total is 49 or lower, 4-1 in his last 5 of those games. And Andy Reid, I trust game planning for a snow game more than I trust Sean Payton. Sean Payton spent most of his career in the NFC South playing in dome stadiums in Florida weather. This divisional game's in the snow. Andy Reid coached in the NFC East. Philly has had snow several times before. I'm sure he's had to have this kind of game plan before. So if I had to lean a certain way, I would lean the Kansas City Chiefs, but I do highly advise not taking a single thing on this football game and just kind of watching it for the entertainment of watching a snow football game, because damn it, that's fun. The next game we have is the 49ers and the Bengals. This one's another tough one for me. A lot of these 4 o'clock games are. The 49ers missing Deebo Samuel and likely missing Trent Williams again, although it's not confirmed. San Francisco's 3-5 without Trent Williams since 2020. Cincinnati has played some easier opponents for the last month or so, however. Besides Seattle, I'll give Seattle some credit, but they faced Arizona, Tennessee, and the Rams in the other 3 games this month. Now they're on the road in San Francisco. That is a tough place to play, especially with the 49ers coming off of 2 straight losses. The 49ers also, I'm 100% sure that the 49ers players believe that they should have been playing in the Super Bowl against the Bengals a couple years ago, if not for a dropped interception by Jaquiski Tartt in the NFC Championship game. Sorry to bring that memory back up to any 49ers fans. Since he's also done a ton of traveling recently. I know that they were just on their bye week, but they went from Cincy to Tennessee to Arizona, back to Cincy, and now over to San Francisco. Then they're flying back home to face Buffalo. It's just a lot of back and forth across the country, north, south, east, west. San Francisco, zone-heavy team. Burrow's better against zone than he is versus man, so it gives me some pause. He's faced a lot of man defense this year, which makes sense given his performance in some of those games. But since he also runs a lot of man defense, not a lot of zone defense, and Brock Purdy has a 121 passer rating versus man defense this season. The Bengals run a lot of 3 wide receiver sets. That's going to put Isaiah Oliver out in the field a lot. I think he's vulnerable. But the spot I'm going to end up going back to here currently is George Kittle. And I know last week he burned us bad, but I am going to continue with the Kittle with no Deebo Samuel spot. It's been very profitable historically. Also, the last time Kittle played against the Bengals, I think it was 2 years ago, he had 13 receptions, 151 yards, and a touchdown. The Bengals are second to last in tight ends. Touchdowns per game allowed to tight ends. The only slightly athletic tight end that the Bengals have faced this season is Mark Andrews. He had 5 receptions, 45 yards, and a touchdown. The guys guarding Kittle are going to be one of Logan Wilson, Jermaine Pratt, Nick Scott. I'm cool with any one of those. The Bengals are high in pressure percentage, so I too want to stay away from the 49ers a bit just because I'm not sure how that left side is going to hold up or that whole offensive line is going to hold up. But I do like George Kittle. I don't think last week, I'm putting it out of my mind. The pressure getting to Purdy might be a check down factor to Kittle as well. I think they're going to be a tight end screener. There's going to be a tight end screener too drawn up. And I just don't think he goes 2 weeks in a row without Deebo Samuel without getting featured in the game plan. George Kittle, anytime touchdown, plus 195, 0.5 units. My lean is the 49ers. See if any of this ice is melted because I don't want to go get more water. All right, 2 more for the day. Or then I guess we can go over the Monday Night Football game as well, although I'm not fully there yet on it. Baltimore at Arizona. This falls in a lot of trend spots that I like. Since 2021, when the Ravens are favored by 7 or more, they are 1-7 against the spread, 2-6 to the under. 6-2 to the under. They're 0-7 against the spread and 5-2 to the under when their opponent is under 500 or at 500. Since 2019, the Cardinals are 4-2 against the spread as home dogs of 5 or more. Everyone's really high on the Ravens after last week. I think it's a very good sell high spot. It's worth noting that the Ravens have failed to cover in 4 of their last 5 games following a 15 or more point win. The under is 34-16-1 when the Ravens are favored by 9 or more and is hit in 4 straight games. The Ravens have covered in 6 of the last 7 games in that spot, however. I think Baltimore could come out flat in this game. They've done a lot of traveling just like the Bengals. I think they've arguably done more since they haven't been on the bye week. They went to London. They came back home to face Detroit. Now they're back across the country on the West Coast to face Arizona. That's 3 different time zones in 3 weeks. At some point, all that travel has to take a toll on you, especially when you were very hyped that they were extremely hyped up to play the Lions. You have to think about now that this feels like more of an easy game for them, yada, yada, yada. I really think they come out flat in this one. The Ravens play a lot of man defense, 5th most in the league. Josh Dobbs has a better passer rating versus man than he is versus zone, so that helps Arizona. Home dogs of 7 or more that have lost 4 straight are 9-4 against the spread since 2021. The under is 9-4 of these games, and 6 of each of those wins has corresponded with the other. So the under and the dog spread has been a profitable combination in this spot. Hollywood Brown facing his former team that he felt wasn't giving him the proper chance to shine. Now they plays a secondary that plays a lot of man that allows, and he has a 107.5 passer rating when targeted in man coverage with a 9% increase in target share against man coverage. That intrigues me. I think the script calls for a lot of passing on Arizona's end, most likely, but I don't like his touchdown odds. I think the odds are too low for how inaccurate Josh Dobbs has been because I believe he's been targeted like 7 or 8 times. Most games he's only gotten like 3 or 4 catches. It's just not working out between them necessarily. I might add it later on in the day if I see it go. It's at 300 right now. I think if it gets to like 320, 330, I could maybe consider a half unit, but I would like a higher line. The total receptions prop as well. I mean, I'd love to take it. The Ravens allow the 3rd most passes per game to wide receiver ones, but I don't necessarily know if the accuracy is going to be there. I know the targets will. So it's something I might sprinkle on later in the day, but for right now, I'm not comfortable with it. The under is hitting 4 of the last 5 games. The Ravens are coming off of hitting it over. In conclusion, Baltimore, Arizona under 44.5 for 1 unit and Arizona plus 10 for a half unit. That 10 number, I don't know if it's still available, but it was last night. I think now we got mostly 9. We do have 10. We have 10 at Bet Rivers now. Okay. Good to see. Last game for the night is going to be Chicago and the Chargers. I have the Chargers in my survivor pool, and I have the Chargers in this game. The Bears are missing, obviously, Justin Fields, but they're also missing Jaquan Brisker, safety. Eddie Jackson's questionable. That's 2 safeties. Tackle Braxton Jones now out, and guard Nate Davis out. Guard Dan Feeney questionable. Offensive line banged up. Secondary really banged up. Chargers mostly just have questionable guys. Since 2020, the Bears are 2-8 against the spread as road dogs of 8 or more points, 3-10 against the spread as dogs of 8 or more without the home road splits. The Chargers have covered in 3 of the last 4 home games where they are favored by 8 or more, and they've covered 5 of their last 6 games versus teams with winning percentages of 400 or lower. I think we see a lot of desperation out of the Chargers this week. They're 2-4. They sit 10th in the wild card standings in the AFC. This is not the NFC. They have to get going now if they want a chance. They have a tough defense of the Jets next week. Then they have the Lions, the Packers, and the Ravens. That is not an easy schedule. This game they have to dominate. They have to get their shit together. They have to get right. The Chargers have the second worst pass defense in the league, but to their credit, they've also faced high-powered offenses such as the Chiefs and the Dolphins, as well as the Cowboys. The Bears are coming off a month where the toughest opponent they played was the Vikings. They beat Vegas and Washington. They lost to Denver. The Chargers are a huge upgrade over all four of those teams, and the Chargers have the desperation factor with them. They have no choice but to take this game seriously. They're coming off facing Dallas and Kansas City. They will be ready for anything. The Bears are last in pressure percentage in the NFL. Herbert has a 106.7 passer rating with a clean pocket. The Bears run zone defense fifth most in the league. They allow the fourth highest passer rating in zone versus passer rating versus zone in the league. Herbert does struggle a bit versus zone, but I wouldn't be too concerned with the way the Bears defense plays in it. The Bears also run the ball 42% of the time. The Chargers' biggest weakness is their pass defense. Their run defense is actually seventh in rush EPA allowed. The Bears' pass defense is worse, arguably, and the Chargers' offense is due to explode. They're seventh in yards per pass. Bears are 27th in opponent yards per pass. The Bears are also 22nd in giveaways a game, and the Chargers are ninth in takeaways a game. Tyson Bagent's first career road game. I could see some jitters getting in there for sure. I know it's just the Chargers, and they won't have a big home base there, but I don't think that the Bears fans will travel that much over to the West Coast either. Third down conversion. Chargers only 19th in third down conversion, but the Bears are 31st in defending it. The Chargers convert in the red zone. They're sixth in red zone scoring touchdown scoring percentage in the red zone. Bears 31st defending it. The Bears do have a good run defense, but it almost doesn't matter in this game where I think the pass offense is going to be so prevalent for the Chargers. I think we see an improved pass defense for the Chargers against worse competition. I think we see a better offense for the Chargers against a bad pass defense and a bad pass rush. I think the Bears may not have Bagent ready for his first road game. I do not trust his coaching staff, and they have a much harder game coming up right now than they've had in the last month. The Chargers run a lot of 12 personnel that keeps a good player in Kyler Gordon, slot corner, off the field for Chicago. I don't think the offensive line will be as big of an issue for the Chargers in this game as it's going to be in bigger games in the future. I have the Chargers minus 8.5 for 1.5 units here. It's my second biggest play of the day behind the Panthers. Monday Night Football, we're going to do a separate stream for that. I've decided tomorrow night, so stay tuned for that. I do not have my play in it yet, and I'm not going to force one here when I may have a very different pick tomorrow night. So that's going to do it for me. One thing I will say is I have a prize picks entry that I think is a very good shout. You get Micah Parsons 0.75 sacks over, TJ Watt over 0.75 sacks, and Hayden Hurst over 19.5 receiving yards. I like all three of those spots, and I really think that it could be a good bargain. And I think, honestly, it could hit in the first half if all things go well. So that's going to do it for me. Hopefully, we'll have Steve back next week, and if not, I will get our guest so we can get a little more entertaining here. But I'm glad that we could go through almost every single game with the exception of Monday Night Football. If your favorite game or your favorite team is one of the teams that I was not as in-depth on and a game that I passed over, I do apologize for that. That's just the amount of time that we really had. I wanted to make sure we got to all the games that I had a lot of notes for. And yeah, so hope everyone has a good football Sunday. Go Giants. And I will see you guys next